This is like a picture of Dorian Gray here. When I'm getting older, he looks exactly like he did. God has a blessing on this man, and we need to give this up. Without further ado, Bob Styler.
Then it's safe and good. Because I find that even if musicians are believers, they don't like anybody touching any of their stuff. So let me just say that in front. And Tony, thank you for saying that, but you really don't see that well anymore. Somebody has to say it. I've seen you drive, and that's one of the things after, which was several years ago, when I became 50 years old, I cannot, for the life of me, put my car between two lines in the parking lot. I cannot do it. I don't know. It just happened. And my car is very tiny. My son came to visit a couple months ago. We got out of the car. We were going into the store, and he puts his arm around me. He said, "Dad, I want to tell you something." I said, "What is it?" He said, "You know the lines in the parking lot?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "They're there, so you're supposed to go in between them. Not like cover half of them." So, but I guess just to bring you up to date for those of you who have known me, I guess the biggest accomplishment in my life, which I really didn't have anything to do with, is that 2.5 years ago, I became a grandpa. And now I'm 2.5 grandpa. And we have a little girl that's on the way and 2 boys. And I guess it was about 10 years ago, there was a good friend of mine. She became a grandparent, and I said to her, "You know, tell me, I hear all this stuff about how great it is, and I don't see, tell me the advantage, what is it?" And she said, "When you become a grandparent, your own children become meaningless." And I thought, what a terrible thing to say. And about 2.5 years ago, my children became meaningless. And I didn't mean to do it. It happened by accident. You know, every time they come over, I have to literally remind myself, I must say hello to my son. I must say hello to my daughter-in-law. Because all I see when the door opens is that little face, and everything else fades out for me. And then I have to remember, yes, hello, how are you? Goodbye. That's pretty much how the visit goes. And I guess one of the most freeing things to me, which I never thought about becoming a grandparent, is that you realize how silly you were when you raised your own kids, because when you have your own children, and obviously you live with them every day, they annoy you 100 times a day. Example, my grandson comes over, and he finally got tall enough that he could ring the doorbell. And when he comes over and rings the doorbell, he stands on his toes and he rings the doorbell like this. Ding, 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 ding. And the first thing I think of when I hear that is, hey, that's so great. He can ring the doorbell. It's, hey, buddy, how are you? But I remember the same experience when my own children achieved that. It was always some version of, you ring the bell once. You wait till somebody comes. And if they don't come after a reasonable amount of time, you ring the bell again, once. And I thought, you know how silly that is, but, you know, I guess you just look at things in a whole different perspective. And again, you know, I don't hear as well as I used to, so it's not as annoying to me as it would have been 30 years ago. You know, hey, what is that noise? Now it's, is that the bell? Not really. Anyway, just before I forget too, you got a little brochure. It tells you a little bit about the ministry of CJF. It has a little bio of me on the inside with a nice picture. My mom liked it a lot. It tells a little bit about how I wound up being here. And on the very inside, there's a little envelope that detaches. And you can sign up on there for my newsletter. Comes out about every 3 months. And just to keep you up to date with what's happening in the ministry, people come to faith, opportunities I've had, special, unique opportunities. So if you would like to do that, just fill that out and you could hand it to me later, or you could give it to my friend Tom. He'll make sure that I get it. He's very thorough. I know that about him. Thorough Tom. So you could do that if you would like. And also, before I forget too, I'd just like to thank Tom and Tony for inviting me here. It's a pleasure for me and a privilege to be here, especially on Sukkot. It just makes it really nice, and I appreciate the invitation to be here. One of the things that Tony mentioned earlier is that there's a prayer during this time of year that invites special guests into the sukkah, and Abraham and Isaac are included in that special invitation. And today I'm going to tell a story about Abraham and Isaac. I did a lot of research on this story, the story of the almost sacrifice of Isaac. And it seemed that everybody who preaches or teaches or writes about the story of Abraham and Isaac seems to take this story mostly from the perspective of Abraham. People always talk about the great faith of Abraham, the obedience of Abraham, the difficulty of the task of Abraham. And hardly anyone ever mentions Isaac. And I thought, humanly speaking, if Isaac was among us today, that he would feel shortchanged. It seems like everybody focuses in on his dad, and he had an important part to play in the story too. So I thought it would be only fair to let Isaac tell us his view of what happened that day. Second thing about this story that makes it very unusual is that it involves the idea of child sacrifice. Now, generally speaking, in the world we live in today, child sacrifice is frowned upon. And it was not really until both of my boys became teenagers that I began to understand the wisdom of that concept. And I remember very clearly one day I went to my wife and I said to her, you know, it's in the scriptures, might just be an option. But it was her lack of faith that prevented us from going down that road. But it's an unusual thing if you think about it. If I had to describe God in only one word, it would have to be that he is a God of love. I believe that's the very essence of God, and everything he does comes from the fact that he is a God of love. And yet, on one hand, we have a God of love who, on the other hand, asks a follower, and not just a follower, an obedient follower, to sacrifice his only son. And sometimes it's hard to put those two different ideas together. So today, I hope that through the telling of this story, we'll have a better idea of why God would allow such a thing to happen. This story is called Don't Talk to Me About Sacrifice. And it's the story of Isaac. There's a song, and every time I hear it, it reminds me of my mountaintop experience. Also reminds me of what a Dylan fan my father is. You know, Bob Dylan, whose real name is Robert Zimmerman, he has become my father's favorite musical descendant. Can't tell you how many times I've heard Dylan tunes coming out of his heavenly tent. And if it's a really good day, Dad even thinks he is Bob. He stands out in front of his tent and the answer, my friends, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. I know. Nobody has the heart to tell Dad how he sounds. He has such a good... Sorry. I'm talking to all of you like you know who my father is. If you don't know who my father is, you're not going